anybody would like to speak during the citizen comment period, there's a form you need to fill out that's on the table right outside the door, and then hand it to Mr. Green, Town Administrator Dan Green. And with that, we'll call to order the Town of Delafield Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. Dan, if you want to call to order, or I'll do that. We'll do, if everyone would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Green, a roll call, please.
Supervisors Kranek,
Present.
Wolfley,
Present.
Michaels,
Present.
and Chairman Troy.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, citizen comments. Public comments from citizens regarding items on or not on the agenda. The board may not engage in a discussion with the citizen making the comments. Individual presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens shall follow the rules set forth in section 2.04 sub 1 sub D of the town code. So if anybody would like to speak on any topic, you may come up to the podium and speak. Don't fight over it.
No fights. Don't fight with each other, you can fight with us.
So Jim Frett, N19W29056, Gulf Ridge North. It's been a little while, I'll be brief. Just as we move into looking at the ordinance again for the Thomas Farm, I just thought I'd make a few comments here. So thanks again for your consideration with these. So it's been about 3 years now. We're making progress, so that's good. You know, I think it all still comes down to what the family believes they're entitled to, and I'm still not sure I fully understand why the residents, the town has to compromise to get more money for the property, but we're working on it. I know that. We're making progress. If the builders can make enough money at $250 for the price that they've paid for the farm or plan to pay for the farm, it seems there's a way to further lower the density a bit to by lowering the price tag of the property if that's what it takes. Again, not going to get into the details of that today, obviously, but just want us to consider that as we move forward, and I know we have been. Lastly, even at $250, that's still over 200% the density of the adjacent neighborhoods, well over the density of neighborhoods like Dover Bay, the Arbors, Woodridge. 2 of those 3 are along the expressway as well. Realize it's a different piece of property, and that all has to be taken into consideration. So to close, I just, again, thanks. We're making progress. Just wanted to make sure we still keep these key things in mind. We've kind of said all along we want it to be similar to the adjacent neighborhoods and to the standards set by the town in the past. So thank you for your time and for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Who do I give this to?
Dan Green, the town administrator.
Okay. Dan, I'm Lynn Snyder, we've spoken on.
Hi, Lynn.
I am Lynn Snyder, and I think he asked you guys at the beginning of the meeting if you got an email from me. I sent it to Dan. I tried to send it to our president, but it got kicked back to me.
Just need your address for the record, that's all.
I'm sorry, what?
We need your address for the record.
I'm sorry, West 291, North 4207, Prairie Wind Circle North.
Thank you.
And I'm a resident of Prairie Wind Farm. Imperial Drive goes right through the heart of my neighborhood. I am one of the original settlers of that neighborhood. We moved in, we were the 3rd house to gain occupancy. So I've been here since the beginning. I live right on a corner on Imperial and Prairie Wind Circle North. I know the entire history, and that's what I was trying to lay out in the email, was the history, because it's been almost 20 years now, and I think a lot of people have forgotten. When the neighborhood was first developed, there were stop signs at each intersection, and we were having a speeding problem. And we ended up getting a committee of people together, worked with the town, worked with traffic engineers, a traffic study, multiple traffic studies were done, and a traffic engineering plan was put in place to slow traffic down. And with the recent repaving project, we just decided to, for whatever reason, step away from that traffic and engineering plan and did things differently, completely disregarding what we were told with the traffic engineering plan. And quite honestly, the results seem to be speaking for themselves. The anecdotal evidence is since you've made those changes, we've had 2 pretty bad incidents in just 2 weeks' time. The most recent one happened just last week when a young gentleman, 20 years old, was speeding so fast through our neighborhood that he went off the road, went across 2, I have pictures on my phone. If you want to give me your email addresses, I'd be happy to send them if you haven't seen pictures, but it was quite a horrific sight. Went off the road, went across 3 properties, flipped multiple times, and ended up in one of our neighbors' front lawn on its side. Miraculously, the driver and his passengers were both fine, and thank God he didn't hit anybody. This was the middle of a sunny summer afternoon. People were out working in their yards, children were out playing, people were walking on our walking path. Luckily, he went on the side where there's houses and not on the path. Had he went on the path, we honestly could have easily had a death on our hands. So I'm frustrated, and I feel like we need the town's help. Something needs to be done. We did go, I mean, speeding's been an issue for a long time, but we at least went a fairly long time, I think years, without any significant problems that I'm aware of. And then suddenly you guys put in the stop signs, repainted the lanes wider, going against the traffic engineer's recommendations. And now all of a sudden we've got more speeding than ever, and horrific accidents have happened as a result. So I'd like to see that traffic engineering plan revisited and maybe even taken a step further to the speed humps. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I worked with the town extensively almost 20 years ago now on this whole issue. So,
Okay, thank you for your comments.
yep.
I appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak on any topic? If not, we'll close the citizen comments section, and we'll move to the approval of the minutes of the July 26th Town Board minutes. Any corrections? If not, we'll take a motion.
A motion to approve the minutes from the July 26th Town Board meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the July 26th board meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Action on vouchers submitted for payment. To my knowledge, there are no sub-accounts or amendments to the 2022 budget, so we'll move to accounts payable and payroll.
For accounts payable, I would like to make a motion to approve payments of checks 65782 through 65783 and checks 65787 through 65807 in the amount of $38,916.13. And for checks 65888 through 65907 and checks 65914 through 65996 in the amount of $3,183,430.96. And then for payroll, motion to approve the payrolls dated August 5th, 2022 in the amount of $16,500.50. And the payrolls dated August 19th, 2022 in the amount of $17,079.84. Do those all line up, Mr. Chairman?
I don't have one for the August 5th. I only have a sheet for, oh, wait, I do. Here it is right here. Yes, they all line up.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the various checks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Now we'll move to communications. And we are privileged to have the Lake Country Fire and Rescue update given to us by Chief Fennick. If you'd like to come up and give us an update. Yeah, and I have one.
Sir?
August 2nd?
So, Mr. Chairman and Town Board, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for allowing me to come speak here. So, as it's been much talked about at our board level, our agency is at a crossroads staffing-wise. Our reliance on part-time and paid-on-call individuals to meet the basic service demands of our community is in jeopardy. And we need some change, and with that, our fire board established a working group of people to help look at the problem holistically and come up with real solutions to the problem. So in April of this year, the fire board established a working group. Anthony Arbusius, your representative from the town here, was on that group, along with Jim Morris, who's a retired fire chief from Wales, Genesee, and Jeff Rumler, who's a rep from Oconomowoc Lake. Myself and Nick Heltemus, one of our battalion chiefs, was on that committee. And we looked at it holistically. And let me just start by saying that this change in this problem isn't a change or a problem that's just affecting Lake Country Fire Rescue. It's affecting all of the small agencies in Waukesha County. It's affecting the state of Wisconsin terribly and the nation all at the same time. And it is precipitated from really an over-reliance in part-time and paid-on-call people to meet the daily needs of our communities. And as it sits right now, our current schedule is 12 people on duty, 24/7, 365. And those 12 people are comprised of 6 full-time members and 6 part-time and members and interns. And what we're really talking about is those 6 part-time members and interns that meet up half of our schedule. And that's where we're really struggling. It's precipitated by COVID-19, which was the second leading killer of firefighters in 2020 and 2021. With that, 2 paid-on-call members from local around here passed away tragically, one from the village of North Prairie, the second from Ixonia. So the village of North Prairie gentleman had 30 years of experience with his agency, was a volunteer, did it, quite frankly, way too long for 0 pay. And he also, the person from the town of Ixonia was a female in her early 30s. She caught COVID on a call and ultimately passed away from those injuries. So that, as you can imagine, questions one, desire and willingness to come and volunteer really at their fire agency for $14, $16, $17 an hour. So that's challenge one. Challenge two is a change in hiring practices by the career agencies. So I'll say the city of Waukesha's, Tosa's, Brookfields, those type of agencies around us. They, in January, February of this year, they started to hire firefighter EMTs, which is our same entry level. So the entry level people that come to us to get training, and they come to us for that training and experience, can now walk on at a city of Waukesha, a city of Brookfield, and rather than making $14 and $17 an hour, they really can walk on to a $60,000 a year job that tops out at 80 with benefits. So it's no wonder where that generation of people is going to go and why we've lost them. To 2020 and 2021, we lost 49 individuals while we hired 19. So we're losing basically on a 3-to-1 ratio. Almost, and that shows no sign of letting up. In addition to that, we currently have 21 active part-time people on our roster. 19 of the 21 people are what I would call career seekers, where they're looking for a job in the fire service and they're using our agency as a stepping stone. And again, these are part-time paid-on-call individuals. So with that, Anthony and company and the staffing group really took it on and really found the need and I'm going to use the word convert. We're not looking to add to our daily schedule. We're merely looking to slowly convert the part-time positions that we have over to career positions and full-time positions. So there's 2 approaches that we looked at doing that. The first approach that was brought out to the board was to do it really in one fell swoop because of what the referendum requirements are and how that would be handled. The board asked at that point to come up with some sort of phase-in plan or something different because it was just too much all at once, and I totally agree with that. It's just too much of a punch to the wall all at once, and we have to come up with a way to responsibly do it over time. So the second approach to that was to take a step back, look at things from that vantage point, and ask some tough questions of the Department of Revenue, and get our other colleagues, such as Mike Coles from the Towns Association, involved in these type of discussions. So what other tools are available to our agency to help us meet these needs? Because CPI +2 barely keeps the lights on in the situation that we're in. It doesn't allow you to add, it doesn't allow you to even convert positions over at the capacity that we need to do it at. So through talking to Mike Coles at the Towns Association, we discovered that there is another way, possibility to do it, and that is in the term of a fire fee. So that is something that has been discussed at length at the staff level. It's been discussed at the board level, and part of what we're talking about tomorrow night and with what our budget is. So what we've laid out at the staff level is a plan to what I'll say responsibly convert those positions on our schedule over to the full-time positions. And it would be done in a manner that hires 7 individuals in 2023, 6 in 24, 6 in 25, and a final 3 in 2027. And with that has all 3 of our shifts now working at the capacity where there's full-time individuals that rely and take care of the daily schedule. So that is approach number 1. That is what we call for the fire fee. And as you can see in your packet, it's called option number 2 here. But it would be represent an approximate $130 fee in year 1, $220 in year 2, $338 in year 3, and $433 in year 4. And I think it's important to note that the out years can be tweaked based on our current staffing needs. And if there is now an influx in part-time people and something happens to that program where it gets rejuvenated, we can ebb and flow with it. Rather, if we go the referendum route locks you into taking a certain set of figure every single year, and that figure will not increase with inflation. So what you get in 24 is not the same as what you get in 23. So ultimately, at some point in time, you will run out of funds and the ability to do it. So that's kind of where we're at with the fire fee and with the phase-in type option. I guess I'll pause there. I've been talking a lot. Does anyone have any questions as it sits right now?
You said that fee can be flexed in further years. Is what does that process look like? Like, what number is used for the benchmark? Where does if you've got these funds going to a specific account, right? What's used to say, hey, we're ahead of schedule, we're behind schedule, so needs to go up, this can go down, and like, where does that? How do you make sure that this is going to solve the problem, so you can make the assessment of you need to flex it up or down?
Ultimately, those are things that would get handled at the board level and reporting back and forth, and here's what we need, here's the benchmark of this group of people, and this is sustaining. Maybe we say, okay, do we have a set number of 30 part-time individuals that are working on a regular basis to handle those type of needs, and then, okay, then in that out year, we wouldn't do any sort of conversion or anything like that. I think it's also important to note on the fire fee aspect of it. I've been asked by a number of different communities if you can break it up into one subsection, maybe charge something for commercial properties versus residential versus multifamily. And the answer to it is yes, the town board can set forth those fees just as they would, and it can be done by municipality too. So municipality, the town of Delafield could do one thing and the town of Genesee could do another. So hopefully, does that kind of answer your question, Joe?
I think so. I mean, it's essentially the answer is as long as we're watching, we get to still make the adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it leaves the control with you versus a referendum. You're set. If you say that we're going to do, just use a round number, $1 million, you have to take that. And if you don't use it, it has to be allocated in a fund that can only be used for fire department type things. So it forces you in to take that. Where in your out years, if, like I said, if we don't need it, or better yet, I believe that there will be some changes coming down at the state level and they could be giving you more funding either from state aid or 2% dues or things like that. And now all of a sudden those changes are made because this isn't facing Lake Country. This is a statewide issue that they're having. And at the Towns Association meetings, it's the #1 thing that's brought up as to how it's handling. And, you know, if things are terrible here, they are awful up north. If you get into Vilas County and some of those counties up there, I mean, it's tragically not even same-day service sometime if you're calling for help. And I should bring up that we've had, you know, a 28% increase in response times from this time last year, while running 11% more calls. So last year, our benchmark that we like to hit, you know, for the protection standards and for American Heart is 8 minutes. We were at 8 minutes and 4 seconds last year. This year, we're at 10 minutes and 28 seconds. So it's a 28% increase roughly in response times. In the month of July, we browned out or closed the City of Delafield Fire Station for 13 out of the 31 days. I mean, that is a terrible thing. We've never had to do that ever in the existence of this agency. Last year, we had basically 90 to 100% staffing every single day. And it's just by a sheer over-reliance on a model that's broken, and it's at a catastrophic failure point.
I have a quick question, just in
Absolutely.
regards to the funding and how that fire fee is taken out and then allocated. You have increases from one year to the next, but how can you calculate the increases when you don't know what percentage of your calls are going to be fire from one year to the next?
It's a projection, and that's what we're working on is just the projection aspect of it.
Okay.
And that's, yeah, it's merely a projection and forecasting, trying to get ahead of the problem.
Yeah, so, I mean, all Lake Country Fire is they're all cross-trained, right? They're fire EMS?
Correct.
Right, so, I mean, theoretically, you're hiring, I guess, does it matter? Right? If you've got to hire someone who's fire, you've got to hire someone who's cross-trained in fire and EMS. Like, is it, when you're looking to fill that, is there a designation on that call that's going to impact this?
I think the issue, Joe, is in order to take a fire fee, the state statute says it can only be for fire, not EMS calls. So
Gotcha.
that's why Dan asked the question.
Gotcha,
And
gotcha.
the ability to have a fire fee would require the town to reduce their levy by the 2014 budgeted fire service. So it has to be related to fire. So how we figure that out is another question.
Gotcha.
The other option that we presented, and I'm not advocating for this option at all, it is an option that's out there. I know a couple communities are discussing it. I know one community already does it, is to simply not take your share of state aid. I would be, you know, I think that will have ramifications down the line that would not do well. So just for full transparency, it is another option that is out there, but I wouldn't advocate you to do that.
And that's what's illustrated in option 1, right?
Correct.
Isn't that what Oconomowoc Lake does?
It is what Oconomowoc Lake does, correct.
Okay, any other questions for Chief Fenning? If not, I have a couple questions. Is it true that the hourly rate is $14 an hour when they're in the building, but if they get called out, it goes up significantly,
No, that's not true. They're $14 an hour across the board.
even on a call? Okay,
That is an old way of doing it.
okay. Okay.
For full transparency, our paramedics get paid $17 an hour.
Flat.
Flat, yep, it's 17 and 14. But right now, we have 4 active paramedics that are picking up part-time shifts and the balance in EMTs.
Okay.
Like we said, the paramedics are highly sought after. You get your paramedic license because you want that to be your career. You know, you're not going to work by us too long for $17 an hour when you can go work at a career agency and do that.
Okay, I pulled out the presentation you made in 2020 for us to make the decision to move to the Consolidated Fire Department. And one of the advantages was stated that agreement spells out that a budget can increase underlined less than or equal to the CPI plus 2%. And now you're proposing it to be at CPI plus 2, or?
I mean, it'll essentially be above that. What we forecasted and what we projected when we were doing the consolidation. I'm really glad you asked this, Mr. Troy, because it's a fair question. Was a reliance on that paid-on-call and part-time model that it was going to be here, and we were going to be slowly, I would say, over the course of 10 years, be able to work our way out of that equation. And the fact of the matter, in today's world, in today's case, like I mentioned, post-COVID, change in hiring practices, and things that, quite frankly, I think would have been impossible to forecast. The backbone of the agency, which is part-time and paid-on-call individuals, is collapsing, and it has a structural problem with it. And again, it's a structural problem with what I'll call smaller combination fire departments that exist across the state. I just need to reiterate, this isn't a Lake Country problem. You see the same thing happening out west of us. We can all obviously see that referendum failed for a various number of reasons. The number one being is that there wasn't really a phased-in type approach to it, where it's an all-in-one. So, and now they're actually looking at phasing in and doing things like that. So,
Okay, but the presentation you made back in 2020 was in the year 2026, our budget was projected to be, with the CPI plus 2, you were projecting a $728,900 budget for the year 2026. And we're going to be basically there next year. If we'd stay at CPI plus 2, we're going to go over it. So, I mean, that's a huge, we're 3 years, and your forecast is less than 2 years old.
yeah, and I own the forecast, Mr. Troy. I created the forecast. Again, I created it based on a model that we know had worked for us for the previous, 15 years. It was a model that we know that, that's what we were able to do for the previous 10 years, and we were forecasting off that history. But I think with record inflation, where it sits right now, just the fire trucks alone, the ladder truck that we purchased.
But that's capital. We're talking operating here. That's capital.
I think it's, with record inflation and the collapse in a system, we have a duty, and I think our job as a fire department is to protect the lives and property of your citizens and the 28,000 residents in our communities. And we are faced right now with a situation, because of a structural collapse in that model, that we can no longer do that. So that, unfortunately, is a catalyst for change, and we have to look at it as to how do we meet the needs of our citizens. I bet you we could, we know from surveying people that have gotten the full presentation before that they expect a response time of 8 minutes or less. When you call 911, there's probably a reasonable expectation that the response time is 8 minutes or less when somebody's not breathing. We can't meet that right now. When your house is on fire, you have an expectation that we're there within 8 minutes or less. We cannot meet that right now. And that's why.
Well, but aren't the citizens telling you through Western Lakes referendum that they don't want to pay the cost of meeting your target? That they just don't want to pay the cost?
I don't know that that's a fair assumption. I think a fair assumption would be is that they wanted a phase-in type approach. I think there are some fundamental differences between the two agencies that I don't think are fair to talk about in a public meeting. But there are some huge fundamental differences between our agency and their agency. So much so for the fact that, I can say this, we just hired their assistant chief to come over and work for us.
So why not do a phased-in referendum? Do $1 million, $1.2 million, as you and I discussed this morning, do $1 million or $1.2 million referendum next April, and that'll get you through a couple years, and then explain to have public meetings and sell it. And my issue with the fire fee is that, in essence, we're subverting the intent of the state statute that says you cannot raise taxes without a public referendum. And we're just subverting that. We're just going, it's a sneaky way to get around it, because we don't have a fire fee now. If we already had a fire fee, we're just raising the fee, but we don't have a fire fee now. So we're taking what could be a referendum, and we're worried that the referendum won't pass, so we're calling it a fire fee. What it is, it's a tax. And we're not having a referendum, and the citizens have no input in it.
And I think the answer to the citizens' input is that We are more than happy to do listening sessions, daytime sessions, nighttime sessions, and really take that feedback and come back and report to you on that feedback that we're receiving. I think
Well, are you willing to do a non-binding referendum on the fire fee question?
you could certainly do that. And I think the beautiful part about this is that all 7 communities can really choose to do things differently. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. One community may not take the levy, one community may not do this. But I think the thing is that we have to make some sort of change for 2023. Whatever that change may be, we can't continue to going down the path that we are. And then certainly happy to talk about 2024 and the out years. If we don't make some sort of significant changes for 2023, we are going to not be able to meet the needs of these citizens. And that is really what we're here to talk about. And, you know, I failed also to mention that our intern program, because of a labor law change, that was a low and free cost type program, and the Federal Department of Labor changed it where now you have to pay those individuals. So again, it's another unfunded mandate. Those interns at the time represented 3 of our 12 daily positions. So it's.
Well, is it your intention to submit a budget at the CPI plus 2% level as a base budget?
I'm here to tell you a CPI plus 2% budget does not protect public safety.
But that wasn't the question.
That wasn't the question. Are you going to present a budget at the CPI plus 2% level?
I've been directed to present that budget, but part of that budget will be the clear understanding that that budget does not protect public safety.
In your opinion?
At
The standards you would like?
I think the standards.
Well, it still protects public, because we get there in 10 minutes instead of 8 minutes.
But you're shooting for 12 right now. Is that what you strive for?
Well, personally, I would vote for a referendum, but I just can't acknowledge taxing the residents of the community without their input, specifically when the intent of the state statute is go get public input before you increase taxes.
I think that this is unfortunately,
Not the time.
well, no, I think that the chief is presenting us with 3 options. We can exceed the levy limits and lose our state aid, which is $100,000 a year, which probably isn't a good idea. Option 3 is a referendum. And I think we all saw with this building, when you start talking fire department and referendums, you probably don't have a good chance of that really being passed. I mean, it's going to be a really hard sell. And I think we saw, you know, how badly Western Lakes went down in flames. And then I think the chief is saying with the referendum, you know, to your point, yeah, he could do like $1 million that's palatable, but then he's going to have to do that every 2-3 years. And that, you know, I mean, instead of taking off and biting the whole chunk off all at once, you know, versus the fire fee. And I understand, you know, from, you know, high level how you're explaining it, Chairman Troy, but the way that I see it is that it's a tool that the state is allowing us to be able to maintain public safety in a way that we can, you know, serve the citizens of the town. I mean, basically, you have 2 constituencies in the town. You have folks who have used the fire service and called 911, used the EMS, used the fire service. You have people who think they're never going to have to call, and they're thankful when they do call and they show up on time. But there's, you know, that group doesn't want to necessarily pay for it. You know, I mean, just based on the fire fees in this memo, and I know that they're just projections, but for like 2023, we're talking about $10.83 a month. You know, 2024, we're talking $18.33 a month. 2025, $28.16 a month. You know, 2026, $36.08 a month. You know, I think, you know, I get really concerned when the chief is telling me that we're not running full staff on the weekends in the town, and knowing that our neighbors and neighboring and mutual aid partners are also having staffing issues. You know, that's great if you have 1 call, but you get 2-3 calls come in. I just pray that, you know, it's not my family member or somebody who needs their help when that situation, you know, comes up. I mean, I just see that as, you know, an insurance policy to, you know, not be willing to roll the dice to, you know, risk that. I mean, I I mean, we still need to hold, and the fire board needs to hold the chief and the, you know, the organization accountable. I mean, we're not gonna give them a blank check, but I think, you know, with, you know, Anthony and, you know, Mr. Michaels, they're doing a good job on the fire board. And, you know, I'd like to hear their input and hear their thoughts.
That's fair. Any other questions for the chief before we call Anthony?
I have one more question. Do you think if you switch to a fire fee, that fire fee will be sustainable through the next 8 to 10 years?
Based on the information that I have available to me today, I think it will be there. I think there may be some point in time where that may run out though, but I believe that you are going to see some sort of different mechanisms come to you in terms of state aid. Again, the Towns Association is screaming for help with this. And Ed, thank you. You brought up, yes, this is a tool that the state gives you. We didn't go and kind of crock this up. It's a tool that the state gives you and a means to do it. So thank you for saying that, Ed.
So obviously this stuff, like inflation, the job market, the career path, all of that came around a lot sooner than could be expected, right? So this is, you know, taking sort of a consideration of both of those comments, right? If you've got that immediate need that needs to be filled prior to the ability to pass a referendum, right? When you say, okay, it's 10, 20 bucks a month for the next couple of years.
But hold on, because this was a misconception I had, Joe, and Ed said it as well. The fire fee, when I was first presented this memo, I thought it was an all-encompassing fee of what the fire service may cost. That's, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, we've studied this a little, but it's not. We still have CPI plus 2% within the budget, and then this is an additional $130
Correct.
that goes on what everybody's already paying.
Correct.
So $10 a month is not accurate. We already have a big chunk.
of the $10 a month.
I misunderstood the memo.
Yes, I did. I misunderstood the memo as well. It's an extra fee.
It's right, $10
We're still
a month
going to raise the
more
levy.
than-
We're still going
right.
to pay what we're paying right now.
And it's not CPI plus 2. It's-
Steve, I'm sorry to point out, that is not correct. The factor, the $130 that you see there does not take anything through CPI. That took the whole increase for next year and put it strictly through the fire fee. If we wanted to take the CPI number out of that, we would have to reduce the figure by $189,000, which then probably brings the fire fee down to less than $120.
Okay, so
happy to-
you took this existing year's budget in 2022 and then put the fee entirely on top of that.
Correct.
And you did not do CPI plus 2% as a
Correct.
part of it. I'm sorry, Joe.
No, no worries. No,
It's just a
I guess-
misconception I
yeah.
had as well.
Not a problem. I guess what the abridged version of what I'm getting at is, so is there the ability to plug the hole with a fire fee for a year or two, present a referendum, say, and by the way, we do this referendum, removes fire fee from your tax bill.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, so it's not a one way, has to happen, has to follow through. I mean, because I guess not only obviously in the results from the Western Lakes Department, where I think they had 2 of the 7 communities, right, pass it. You know, it's a big ask if you have to, according to this, and, you know, so the amount would be in 5.2 million, and that encompasses multiple years, correct, the need for several years moving forward, right? So I guess my concern is if we've got the time to wait for it to go to referendum, and then how much worse the problem is if it doesn't pass.
So I appreciate that comment. I think, yes, I think we have an immediate need for next year, and that's what we're really focusing on, getting the immediate need for next year filled, where we can stop doing these station brownouts, where we can maybe get those response times back to halfway where they were last year. And then, yes, I think we can certainly discuss, if the town of Delafield wants to do a referendum, they can do it. I do not, from the conversations that I've had with the other municipalities, right now there may be one other community that does a referendum. The other communities at this point are looking at the fire fee very, very closely. And I can say that the communities to the west of us are also looking at the fire fee very, very closely in doing a phased-in type approach. So we're obviously, everyone's communicating, everyone's trying to work together and share information as it's available. But this
Of
is,
the 7 municipalities in our consortium, how many currently have fire fees?
0.
Oconomowoc Lake does not have a fire fee?
Oconomowoc Lake puts it all on the levy.
Okay.
They exceed the levy limits, correct?
Oh, they exceed, okay.
Yes, so they have no cap.
Yeah, so let me rephrase the question then. Either exceed the levy limits or have a fire fee.
0, or the Village of Oconomowoc Lake does.
I'm sorry?
Village of Oconomowoc Lake does.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay.
But the other ones, I don't want to speak for specific communities. I've had 7 meetings very similar to this meeting and the meeting that we had this morning, Mr. Troy, and there is a genuine understanding of the need and a genuine support to correct the need and to provide what I will call one of the most basic forms of government, and that is fire and EMS protection, and to continue doing that in a way that's responsible and safe.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we got I-94, we got lakes, we got Highway 16, we got, you know, it's a unique service area.
I mean, I'll point out, the woman in the back that talked about the horrific incident that you guys had last week. I mean, our response to that was hindered. We had a structure fire on July 16th in the town of Genesee. It took us 12 minutes to get there. It was a fire that started outside of a garage by someone that parked their riding lawnmower in a plastic shed. Came in on a Sunday evening, got done mowing his lawn, parks his lawnmower, and 10 minutes later, the graduation party next door sees the shed on fire, spreading to the garage. So they bang on his door, he gets there, he tries to put it out with a garden hose. He's unable to do that. He calls us. It takes us 10 minutes and 50 seconds or so to get a shift commander on scene. Shift commander has to drive past the fire station in Wales where the lights are on and no one's home. Okay, so the response didn't come out of Wales. It came out of upstairs here, and the crews here got there. They got here in 12 minutes, but by that time, the fire's extending through the attic of the garage into the kitchen and into the living space of the tri-level home. The gentleman went back in the house to get his dogs and cats out of the house. 9 out of 10 times when somebody goes back in the house to get them, they don't come out alive. Thankfully, he did that. It took us 20 minutes to get the ambulance on scene at that fire. And Joe, I'll point to the insurance guy, you know, what those statistics do. And I don't know the number of uninsured people that are around right now. I don't know how many people have replacement value, but what we're hearing is that a number of these fires, because of the cost of construction, some people are uninsured, so they're not getting the full replacement value of let it burn to the ground, I'll just build a new one. It's
Underinsured.
Yeah, there you go.
Not on it.
Sorry.
Okay, any other direct questions for the chief? Okay, thanks, chief.
Thank you, sir.
Anthony, would you like to speak? Anthony's our town representative, non-board person on the fire board, and is actually a firefighter in a previous life.
Yeah, so I'm a former firefighter, paramedic, associate degree in emergency medical services, had both administrative and command responsibilities when I was in the fire service. I've been in the private sector now for about 23 years, and I have graduate education both in MBA and strategic management. So I really appreciate the opportunity to stay connected to the fire department. And just to add some commentary on what the chief shared, I was part of the staffing committee assigned by the wider board to look into this. And the first question we tried to understand is what really accelerated not only the personnel needs to backfill these positions, but the expense, and it's twofold. Certainly we have the part-timers and the internship program, and I think that is probably a gap that could have been identified by the board sooner. We have not been a member of that board for a long time, but to give you some financial perspective, there are 10 interns in the program that fill the equivalent of 3 FTE positions on that staff, the way it rotated, at a annual cost of about $100,000. Because of the change in legislation, those same 10 would now cost about $300,000. And there's no benefit expense with that. So replacing them with a reliable force with benefits of a full-time person is one of the accelerating factors that we've seen. I think there's really 2 issues that the board has to understand. So the fire board's meeting tomorrow to look at a budget. Chief Fenning's been given direction to present a budget at a CPI +2 contribution for the municipalities and then discuss the ramifications of that. But there's really two issues in front of the fire board. One is the staffing issue, that if we do not respond to that currently, and I think no matter what's decided for the 2023 budget, it'll be an ongoing discussion. There will continue to be brownouts because what I foresee, and the chief has full operational control over the department and decision-making, is a further reduction of on-duty staff. And I could see that number going down permanently from 9 to 12 based on some of the cuts. But there's a separate funding issue to the board, in front of the board with the budget, that just if, and again, this hasn't been discussed in full, we had a robust conversation last week in a budget workshop. If, setting the hiring aside, if we freeze any hiring of these currently open positions or backfilling, which last year, coming out of the budget meeting, the plan was to hire 1.5 persons per year for the foreseeable future, but assuming no hires, the budget was still in a deficit because of price inflation, fuel, service contract inflation, would still be in a deficit of almost $400,000. Now, it's my understanding, although I haven't seen it presented, the chief has made some hard decisions to get that number down under $200,000, which will be discussed. So at best, I still think that at 5.2, we're going to have to look at some operational funding mechanisms that we have at the board to just get through the 2023 budget. They don't even begin to address the personnel issue at hand. I break down the challenges into threefold. We have the personnel issues that the chiefs discussed. We've had the price inflation issues, which have affected everybody. And certainly we've had the talent recruitment and retention challenges. So as this board considers what will be recommended, hopefully from the fire board to this board to consider, know that those are the challenges that are really being, is one, just the operational budget for existing services, and then separate is, do we go ahead and fund this year through alternate funding mechanisms to backfill some of these open positions to maintain somewhat a consistent level of service? Or is that tabled for a future time? But I can confidently say my characterization would be, until we fund, if we have to make some of the cuts that I think are going to have to be made, I can't imagine how they don't further reduce the intern program, which would be a further reduction in on the on-duty staff, which, going back to the 2020 agreement that this town entered in service, and what staffing would look like around all the communities, will be an actual reduction of that.
How many staff do they have?
Full-time?
Yeah, full-time.
Full-time, there are 28 full-time firefighters, is that right, Chief? That does not
How
include
many of those
administration?
full-time firefighters are at the $14 an hour?
Um,
$14 an hour is the part-time pay on call.
That's the 14 pay on call rate. Okay.
Our staff is primarily paramedics, which would be at 17, is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, so dailies, I'm sorry, it's his turn to speak.
No, that's all right.
So daily staffing right now is, there are 6 and 6 on what I'll call shift A and shift B, they're 24-hour shifts. And, on the shift C, if you will, it has 5 individuals plus the battalion chief. So they're, right now, so we're at 17 line people plus the battalion chief, so that equals 20 are on the line, if you will. Those are the ones that work the 24 on, 48 off rotating shifts.
So is it fair to say the biggest portion of your payroll budget are the line officers that are not?
The biggest portion of our payroll budget is by design, the people that can go out and respond 24 hours a day to make a difference in their lives. So that's hands down.
Okay, go ahead. Andy.
The other things to be aware of is, in comparison to the other fire departments in our area, they're typically funded 80% municipality and 20% through self-revenue generation. We're currently operating at 60-40, primarily because of the strength of our training center. We just entered a strategic contract with Bell Ambulance, which brought on an additional full-time instructor to the training program. But what that does is not only self-funded by the amount of the contract, it's allowing us to reduce our adjunct training staff expenses, which I believe that's going to be a savings of $30,000 in that. So there's other things that we're trying to do to make sure that we can self-fund. We've also recently looked at transportation charges when we transport someone in the ambulance. And going into this year, we did raise the inspection fees for the general community, not just town of Delafield, but for all the areas funded by Lake Country Fire Rescue.
Okay, any questions for Anthony?
That 60-40 percentage, where 40 is self-funded,
Yep.
thoughts on the staying power of the ability to keep it at 40?
If we have to make these hires to backfill these positions and stay at 12 minimum, and just for clarity, if you hire 12 full-time, to fill this 12 with full-time professional firefighters, you actually have to hire more than that, because you're gonna have about 650 hours, 650 day, 24-hour shifts to cover between sick time and vacation times. So we'd have to actually hire a little bit more than that. That's just full transparency to do that, but we would be closer to the 80-20. And that's because we've been using the intern program cost and the part-timers. So the whole intern program previously was $100,000. The cost of a professional FTE right now is closer to $125,000. So if you think that we had 3 people, 3 FTEs for 100, and every single that we hire professional with benefits is about 125, you can see how the math does not work in the favor of very easily.
Anything else for Anthony? If not, we'll have Steve Michaels.
No, thank you, Anthony. Anthony's
Thank you, Anthony.
a great asset to the town, and I enjoy working with him and all the work he puts into this. I don't think there's any question from this body or the fire board or anyone else on our desire to have high service levels and the need in changing dynamics of the fire service. I think that's without question that the paid-on-call model is fading, and we need some way to do it. I think what is an open question is how do we fund it, and how do we talk to the taxpayers of the town of Delafield about what is the right way to do it? I mean, it's in some ways a fundamental question of representative government versus democracy, and how much time do we have to solicit the feedback we need to charge a new tax to the residents of the town? That's a big deal. I want to maintain the service level. I want to be very, very cautious of the equally important competing interest of maintaining a low-cost environment for the people of the town of Delafield. Mr. Troy mentioned the agreement prohibiting additional tax increases. The intermunicipal agreement doesn't contemplate a fire fee. It contemplates CPI plus 2%. So I believe that changes would be needed to be made to the intermunicipal agreement if we contemplated approving a budget that goes beyond CPI plus 2%. I'm sure Chief will disagree with me now or at some point in the future on that, but, oh yeah, go ahead.
Can that be done in time for the 2023 budget? I'm not sure it's even possible mechanically to go through the whole process of modifying the
This was an issue the city raised at our last meeting. Chief,
So I can point out that one community is so the way the intermunicipal agreement is written is that a board to propose any sort of amendment, a board member from the LCFR board has to approach their municipality to seek such amendment. And again, we are merely amending, or the request is to amend a certain specific section of the agreement, not to amend the agreement in its entirety. And I certainly think that that's achievable. We actually discovered that there is a flaw in the agreement, the way it is written right now, because the state law changed last year for the CPI. So CPI in the way the agreement is written is October 1 through September 30. And actually the state law changed in 2021, where it is now September 1 through August 31. So the way the agreement is in its entirety right now is broken, and it has to be amended anyways. So we will be discussing some of that tomorrow night. But there was a village board meeting last night in the village of Crown North Lake where board member Rumler approached the board and received unanimous support to amend this to keep us viable as an agency.
a great update, and that is a hurdle that this body will need to consider as far as There was protections built into the intermunicipal agreement that would put controls on the budget, and we're going to be contemplating removing them. It may be for a good reason, it may not, but it's a competing interest that we have to take very seriously, that we're removing that clause that would keep costs down. I think the board has had really good discussions. I don't think it would be prudent, and it has been my position all summer, that it's not appropriate for the town of Delafield to consider imposing a new fee onto its residents until the town has had an appropriate look at and full review of what the budget looks like without doing that. So I don't think this body should consider anything as far as a fee until we've had time to consider what it means to do it without it, right? Where are we at right now? What are the needs and what are we looking at? So I won't support any sort of fee unless there is a equally approved and presented to this body budget that is just CPI plus 2%. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. It hasn't been presented to the board. I understand we'll get it tomorrow, but that's the first thing we need to look at is where do we stand today and what does it mean to continue at this level of service before we can continue on with the fee. I have concerns about the fee, and I understand it's a draft that needs to be phased out. As far as some of the estimates in here, it's one of my overarching concerns about this is that it is August 23rd, and we're up against things. I wish it was February. I really do. I wish we had time to have public hearings. I wish we had time to learn all the answers. My read of this memo was the same as your guys, where I thought the $130 represented the entire cost to the people of Delafield for the fee. That's changed. I have concerns about this number is based off 11,000 developed parcels in the entire service area. It doesn't take into account equalized value. It doesn't take into account somebody that has a $5 million home versus somebody that has a one-bedroom apartment in our communities. Everything we do as a municipality, as a taxing entity, is based off of equalized value. We're drastically changing that when we throw that out the window and we talk about a flat fee. How are we counting businesses in Oconomowoc Village off of Wisconsin Avenue that are frequent users of your service? How are we counting the Walmart when we're taking into account how we're funding this? I don't see anything in here that says Walmart takes a lot more of our resources than my home on Maple Avenue. And it's a complete change in how we pay for anything. And I think those things need to be vetted. Whether we have time to do all that or not in 2022 for a 2023 budget, I don't know. I recognize the need, and I think we need additional resources for the fire service. I don't have a position as to whether we can accomplish that now or whether we need to look at passing a CPI plus 2% budget for 2023 while we go to the voters in April, while we have further understanding of what this all means. I don't know the answer to those questions, and I'm grateful that we're having this
All
conversation.
good questions. I mean, it's an excellent point. They're all good points.
So, but that's not to say that I don't support the fire service. We couch a lot of this conversation in terms of life-saving services as well. We should, because that's why it's so vital. But we can't lose prudence over how we tax the residents while chasing that. I really reject, this happens at the fire board all the time. People say things like, well, that's a cable bill. And it's like, well, you know, Rome wasn't built in the night, and people complain about how high their property taxes are. Your property taxes are high because of one cable bill at a time that people just passed and passed and passed and passed, and now they're high. So I don't like looking at it as a small amount of money that we're putting onto the people. It has to come in the context of this is how we fund services that we need within the confines of what we have. If we feel that we have to exceed that for the benefit of the residents, then it's a very big ask of us. And it's an ask that is not something that we can decide in one meeting. It's not something that we can decide with 15 people in the room. I would like the room filled with people. I want it to look like the Thomas Farm in here when we're when we're talking about taxing you more. I may agree with the chairman. I don't know that. Why don't we ask the people? At least the residents of Western Lake had the opportunity to give their opinion on what was being asked. This option does not do that. I have concerns about 2026 and the out years that are talked about in here. I'm very appreciative of the work the team did. I personally do endorse the idea that we need more full-time firefighters. I personally endorse that the part-time paid on call method of operating fire service is fading. I do not know that the high-end number presented in here with that many firefighters is actually appropriate. That's just because I don't know. People are smarter than me, but that's a debate we can have moving in out years. One of my questions for Dan or for you guys that know more about the budgeting than me is, essentially Lake Country Fire is going to tell the town what it costs for fire service in 2023, right? And Chief is telling us it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to pay for that. Is that correct? So a community like, I'll pick Shaniqua, this isn't for any specific reason. Or I'll just say a vague community, because I don't want to put this on them, that might have a large reserve or something like that. Could they choose to spend more money in 2023 out of that to fund fire services or pave less roads? Does anybody know the answer to this, as how the mechanisms?
I would say that if the town approved a budget that was over CPI plus 2%, then we'd have to find a way to fund it. But that's why we ask for 2% plus CPI or other means to fund it. But we don't have it in our budget to fund, an additional $100,000 for the fire department. So that's why you guys are here to approve or deny a budget that's in front of you. I think that's why in the chief's back pocket, I think we discussed having a 2% plus CPI budget in case the fire fee doesn't go through, in case, if we're not going to get a referendum done this year. But that's the purpose of it. So the question, and I don't have an answer for you, but I can speak to the Department of Revenue, is if we approve 2% plus CPI, but we spend over 2% plus CPI, do we lose the ability to do 2% plus CPI the following year? And I think that's the bigger question, because we have then spent more than what is allowed for us.
Because we're specifically charging a levy to the citizens of the town based off of what fire service costs?
Yeah, the taxes that we collect, we're limited to 2% plus CPI, and that's not just in this contract, it's state statute. So if we spend more than 2% plus CPI, we have to put in the budget what we spent for the fire department the following year. And so if we went over that 2% plus CPI, we might not qualify for 2% plus CPI in the following year.
And does charging a fee, thereby going over CPI plus 2%, impact that?
It does not. I got confirmation from the Department of Revenue this morning. If we do a fee, we can still get our 2% plus CPI for EMS service. And just to be clear, the fee is specifically for fire service. So Chief and I had a meeting where we discussed 26% roughly of the calls that were done in 2021 were fire. So the fire fee would essentially be 26% of their operating budget, with 74% being EMS service, which would come out of the tax levy. So that fee is for fire service only. That does not include.
So basically, we're paying for EMS service out of our levy, but the fire service would be paid out of a special fee.
Correct.
Chief? Yes, sir.
I think there's been a lot of commentary from other communities and so forth on the timing of this, right? We have time to educate the taxpayer with other, boards such as this one to respond. I think it's important to understand that the original plan presented by the chief was to look at a 2024 referendum, and the board, after seeing the need, said, can we wait that long, but you need it today?
When did that take place?
Go find solutions. That was in July 12th. So, and that's when all this other homework for fees.
Yeah, I mean, the board did not take an action instructing
They did
that.
not take an action, but they said,
That was
give
a
us all the
sentiment
al-
that the chief
give it-
picked up on,
right,
correct?
Give us all the alternatives, give us something to move faster, and I only point to that because, again, we still need to make sure we have an operating budget to keep the lights on for 2023, which we're gonna get to the bottom of tomorrow. I'm confident we will do that in compliance with the IMA and our requirements. I do believe that. I do believe this will be an ongoing
Well, you will have an operating budget because your default, if you can't, if your proposed budget fails or you can't reach an agreement on a budget, isn't your default the 2022 current budget without a CPI? Isn't that what the agreement says?
It is. I hope that we can meet one that meets it so we don't have to make further cuts.
Chief, why did you say no?
No, if the board cannot agree to a budget,
Or a municipality votes against it, it dies?
yes, that is the caveat. So if the board does not agree to a budget, then it becomes on the fire chief, and it says the fire chief and the fire commission then propose a budget for the municipalities. So if the board is deadlocked, then it becomes on me to present a budget to the municipalities, to present, and then you have up until December 1st to pass said budget. If you don't pass said budget.
December 1st.
That's according to the agreement.
Yes.
If you don't pass it, then you are correct, then it reverts back to last year.
Without CPI, just 2022 actual budget. Yeah, okay. So you'll have the lights on, that just may be on dim.
Well, my optimism is to get there, to stay at a flat budget, we would not only have to further probably eliminate, without using alternative funding mechanisms we may have, such as a fund balance to cover what I think is the existing deficit, which would just create a structural deficit going into 2024. To not use that mechanism tomorrow, we would probably have to eliminate an intern program, and if we had to stay flat this year, we'd probably be looking at layoffs is what I would think.
So how much would you have to take out of reserves?
Probably.
Roughly.
Roughly, I would say probably just under 200,000, maybe 150 to 175 in that area.
But wasn't there a proposal earlier this year to give back to the municipalities
Which
145,000?
we vehemently opposed as members of that board because we felt it was irresponsible. This is an exact.
You and Steve did. I agree with that. Yeah, we opposed it too.
Which, what I felt was irresponsible based on our 2021 budget conversations.
Yeah.
Which at that time.
And based on this, it would have been.
In last year's budget conversation, I felt personally that the board needed to be more aggressive in addressing some of the looming issues, which just accelerated for all the reasons they have for other businesses, but.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to not make a faulty assumption. The assumption is the first 145,000 out of reserves is already available.
Well, thank God that 140,000 is
It's
there.
there, yeah, I know.
That's correct.
We fought
That's
hard
correct,
for it.
And that's why I'm confident that we can get there, so we can have the time to do this in a way that the town board is comfortable with and our citizens.
Me too, yeah.
And I just wanted to point out, the chief realistically had originally come with a 2024, outlook and saying, now we're gonna limp along like we have been with brownouts and increased response times. And then I think he was following that direction to accelerate.
Well, from a timing perspective, it would have been more, would have been advantageous, because that would have given us a year to field test the concept and you go out and do a referendum, binding or non-binding, have citizen input and educate ourselves as to, we're on a very short cycle here.
Nobody's financial projections a year plus ago included 9% sustained inflation, right?
At 9%.
Intern program changed when, February,
December last year.
December.
Yeah. Any other questions? Or Steve, did you finish your comments?
Yeah.
Okay,
Two just follow-up questions on Steve's comments? if I may?
sure.
So I will say, met with the Village of Wales this afternoon at 2 o'clock. They're gonna do a public hearing on this in September. So they are sending out a mailing to their constituents for a public hearing to hear feedback on it in September.
On what?
Fire fee.
The fire fee.
Yeah, on the whole situation at hand. We have an hour-long presentation. I know I told you 20 minutes.
I know, we're well over an hour already, yeah.
I do apologize to that, but I thank you for allowing me to hijack it. We have about an hour-long presentation that kind of spells it from front to beginning, and then allows about an hour for comments at the end of it. And I think that that's a presentation that Anthony and the group has spent a ton of time developing.
You'll have your budget proposal by then. Because your budget proposal has to come to us by the 13th of September.
I think it's by the 1st, according to the IMA, but
September
our
1st.
meeting is the 13th, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
September 1st.
So, but anyway, I'm more than committed to, if that's an avenue that you wanted to go, to start getting feedback on this. I'm certainly happy to do whatever it takes. I am out of town the 18th through the 22nd, 21st right now, so that would not work, but after that, so vitally important that we can make it happen. And Steve, just one follow-up comment. Ton of feedback that I have received from all of the municipalities is the need to break it down one step further, from a, just a flat $130 fee per parcel for, do something different for the Walmarts. We have square footage breakdowns of all of our businesses, in our pre-plan software and because of our fire inspection building. So yes, we could do it. I think it's very important though that we're not picking on a small, what I'll call a home-based business, like a State Farm Insurance Agency or something like that, where they pay the same as Walmart. Like we have to break it down per square footages and things like that. And then you could do it per residential unit on multifamily type buildings. So this was a conceptual plan that needs a lot of feedback and a lot of tweaking out, but you could do it in such a manner where it's laid out that way. So.
Okay, let's move on. Any other questions? We'll give it a lot of
Oh, is
thought.
there anything else that you guys want to see? Anthony and I have a meeting tomorrow where we have the opportunity to ask questions and.
I'd like to see an organizational chart of the fire department and get a feel
Right here.
for,
Oh, like a current organizational
yeah,
chart?
current organizational chart.
This is basically, it gives you the two shifts, what it doesn't give you on top of it is the admin staff, which is myself, Sandy Rosh, the assistant chief that we just hired in town.
I don't have a necessarily question, it's just obviously we've got three options presented in this scenario, right? And all of them have their flaws, right? Go by value, you lose state aid, go by fire fee. I hate adding a tax line item. I feel like anytime a tax line item is added, it doesn't go away, right? Referendum takes time, right? But if we've already lost 2 minutes on response time in less than a year, right? So less than a year, 2 minutes on response time, and now we're talking about where we're pushing into a referendum to April, which gives releases the budget to when?
24 and 4.
Right, so to 2024, my concern on that is what's the response time by the time we hit 2024?
Yeah,
Right.
I share your same concerns. I mean, there's the immediate need of, making sure that we don't have brownouts at our stations, and then, the education of our taxpayers and making sure that they understand what we're doing or what decision we're gonna make. I honestly, predict those public hearings are the same, discussions we had when we talked about getting rid of up the drive, garbage service. So, I welcome them. I think we need to be fully transparent with our, constituencies and our taxpayers, but I think at the end of the day, this is a basic public service that we provide that is vital, and we gotta get those response times back and make sure that we're fully funding
And
our
has
fire
some time
department.
sensitivity to the action we
Yes.
do.
Well, but if you recall the garbage process, we spent 2 years working on that. We did an RFP. We discussed it over a good 18 months.
We had
We had a
public
number of hearings.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I agree with you, Joe. I agree with you.
Not this rush approach
But
that we're in
this
here.
this doesn't look anything like the garbage process. The garbage process had its own flaws, but
And the chief's original proposal was to come out in 2024 and just let 2023 be CPI plus 2. And the board came in and said, are there more immediate ways to address it? And that's how we got here.
Right.
But his original concept was, let's take it a year and a half and work through it intelligently and look at everything and have public hearings and talk to our citizens to see what an appropriate
And I'm
response is.
certainly not opposed to that. It's just, I'm trying to, I get the urgency in this, right? There's somewhere in here.
yeah,
There's
I'm
not- there's
asking,
n-
can we do both? It's
Right,
an open question.
Exactly. There's not every one of these three options certainly has its flaw. But whatever one of these three options has the best answer, right, is what's the time sensitivity of it, right? What's the time impact and the response result to our citizens, right?
Yeah,
So
there's definitely no easy solution. I have somebody who was sitting up here when we, approved the intermunicipal agreement and approved the consolidation. I knew that eventually we were gonna move to a full-time staffing model. I, as, the chief and other folks, did not anticipate the COVID and the drying up of this paid on call, the changes to, the intern program and some of these things that are participating, why we're having this discussion this evening, I mean, it's not like this is a big surprise to anybody. It's just happened a lot sooner than a lot of us had anticipated.
Chief, is this body going to have an opportunity to look at two different budgets so we can properly weigh both options?
Yeah, it's up to the board tomorrow night to approve one or two, or, how that plays out.
You seem to know how tomorrow's going to go. Are we going to?
I have no underlying tone on how tomorrow's gonna go.
Okay.
I know that from the support that I hear, we need to take steps next year to address the challenge.
How many municipalities have you already met with, like you're meeting with us tonight?
Formally at a board type meeting.
Just met with, okay? They informed them of the process. So we're the last one you've met with,
For timing wise, I met with Oconomowoc Lake last night,
okay?
and you guys are on time, meeting schedule wise.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise,
You were going to say something, Anthony.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think and this is opinion on one voice on the board, I think that to get into 2023 at a, minimum viable level, what I hope the board at a minimum does is recommends a budget to each municipality with a clear itemization of unfunded needs to help continue the conversation. So we have at least actionable items and you can continue the budget process, but we'll see how the board meeting plays out.
Is that in two budgets or is that one budget?
Well, I think there's one budget. I think if you send two budgets, I think
it's confusing.
I think you have to declare, I think we have to make, as a board, we have to make a recommendation. This is what we want you to pass, these are the things we need you to know as an ongoing dialogue. And what is what I am hopeful for.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, everybody. Steve, Anthony, Chief Fennick. With that, we'll move on to unfinished business. There is none. And now we'll move to new business. Discussion and possible action on the approval of a mutual cooperation agreement between Waukesha County and the town of Delafield regarding the CDBG entitlement program and the home consortium program for federal fiscal years 2023 through 2025. Dan?
Yeah, I'll take this. So Steve Michaels pointed out on the bottom of page 4 and top of page 5, that municipality must select 2 action items listed below, and they give pretty specific action items that we would have to take. I would like to table this. I'd like to get back to Dale Schaefer on exactly what this means.
No, I'm all for tabling.
Yeah, I got big concerns about this one,
Yeah,
so thank
so-
you, Dan.
Motion to table.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Topic is tabled. And shall remain on the agenda at the next meeting.
Yep.
Okay. 9B, discussion and possible action on the following recommendations from the Plan Commission. Tom Beatree, 229 Lindale Road LLC, regarding consideration and possible action on a certified survey map to split the land into 2 parcels. Recommendation was approved by the Plan Commission 5-0. It was unanimous. Dan, you want to take these separately or together? Or Tim?
We can take them separately.
Okay.
All right, I'll be brief here. This parcel is located north of 16, south of JK. It's the Cassandra's auto yard right now. It's one large parcel of just under 20 acres. The request is to split it into 2 lots, a 7.3 acre lot and an 11.3 acre lot. The 7.3 acre lot would be for Cassandra's. To remain on that. And then there's another business that is being proposed on the easterly lot. The lots meet all frontage and size requirements in the M1 zoning district. Access to the easterly lot would be through a shared driveway. They have provided a shared driveway agreement that I have reviewed and will eventually have to be approved and signed by the property owner on that. The Plan Commission did make a 5-0 recommendation. I just want to, there were some conditions associated with that, which would be technical corrections that I have prepared, as well as any technical review comments by Waukesha County, as well as the driveway agreement being executed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the CSM as presented, subject to the incorporation of any and all Waukesha County review comments and subject to any technical corrections by the town engineer and the submission and approval by the town engineer and administrator of the shared driveway agreement prior to the execution of the CSM by town officials.
Does this encompass both of these, or is this just the first one?
Just the
Just
first.
the CSM for the first one.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 9B1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 9B2, Tom B. Dry, 229 Lindale Road LLC, regarding consideration and possible action on a conditional use amendment for construction of an addition to the showroom at Cassandra's Motorsports and to update the property description. Again, the recommendation was approved by the Plan Commission unanimously, 5-0.
I guess I probably should have asked this before we just took that last vote, but splitting this parcel doesn't adjust the conditional use permit across the parcels, right? It wasn't like that conditional use permit encompassed all 20 acres and splitting it didn't just like
The
half it.
existing conditional use was for the full 20 acres.
Okay.
The action that we're asking on this particular item is now that there is a split, there would be
Just to
there would
amend
be a
the
conditional
11.3.
use on the 7 acres for Cassandra's to operate, and I can explain why that is. And then the easterly parcel would not have a conditional use on it.
And nothing we're doing today addresses the easterly portion
That is
of
correct.
what we refer to as the toy box.
That's correct, yeah.
But it wouldn't be, so that's essentially what, those condo units are conforming, so it wouldn't need a conditional use.
We're not dealing with
We're not
this
even
right
dealing with those.
We're not dealing with those, but those are being reviewed under a
What I'm,
site plan and plan of operation under the M1 district.
okay. All I'm clarifying is that we didn't just split that conditional use and now, but you already answered the question. We only need it on the,
That's correct.
Right,
And the
so
reason for that
that's
is that when that dealership was created in 1970, there was a code that required that in the M1 district, you have to have, for any outside, you couldn't have outside storage. And if you had outside storage, then you had to have a fence or some screening.
yeah,
for the
I'm
whole
good with it,
thing.
as long as it stays with the piece it needed to stay with. That was,
Okay.
so that's fine.
Yep. That's the reason it's a legal non-conforming use. We allow the cars to be outside storage.
Right.
And so we're perpetuating that. And so what all this amendment does is they want to do an expansion. You can see it up there in the highlighted area it's actually to the west of that. All that's going to be is a showroom. The operation of the business does not change from what it is, and that conditional use was approved last year. And so basically, we're giving them the allowance to expand the showroom by 7,976 square feet. The Plan Commission reviewed the architecture, the landscape, there is going to be no new lighting, the grading and things like that, and they've approved that. As I said, the showroom will be the same use, which is newer pre-owned vehicles and watercraft. And then, as part of the conditional use, we also state that the premises will be modified to be Lot 1 of the certified survey map that you just created. So then, the legal description for that lot changes to the 7.3 acre parcel now.
Yep.
But everything else in the conditional use remains the same.
We're just updating the legal description, basically.
And allowing the
Well,
expansion.
allowing the expansion of the showroom.
Those are the two key ones, allowing the expansion, no change in use, and the legal description.
And we're doing nothing with the toy box.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
That's fine.
Motion to approve the conditional use amendment for construction of addition to the showroom at Cassandra's Motorsports and to update the property description.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 9B sub 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 9C, discussion and possible action on the sale of a reserve Class B license to the city of Delafield and the approval of a liquor license transfer agreement. Dan, you want to go through the history on this?
Sure. So, a while back, I'm going to say a year ago, the city approached us in discussions on purchasing one of our reserve Class B licenses for a restaurant that was proposed. The restaurant owner, I think, was trying to go through all the processes to open the restaurant, and a year later, here we are, and they're ready to move forward. So we had discussions on the cost, the applicable sales in the area, and what those licenses go through. The state statute requires that reserve licenses are sold at a minimum of $10,000, but with the fee to be established by the transferring license holder, which would be us. The city agreed to a $25,000 fee. And so that's what's before you now is the transfer agreement that outlines the $25,000 fee and the language in the agreement. Basically, the one thing in the agreement that the city would have to consider is just that they can't hold us liable for any of the actions of the restaurant with our liquor license because it is officially transferred to the city. We can't get that license back, but every 500 increase in our population, we do receive another reserve license. And those regulations on licenses were brought forward by statute back in 1995, I believe, that limits the Class B liquor license only for municipalities. Currently, we have 8 liquor licenses and 4 reserve licenses. This would bring us down to 3. We currently have 3 regular licenses in use. I don't see us utilizing all 8 licenses in the town or beyond the 3 that we have. So I would look for a motion to approve. And I have in the recommendation that the authorization under Wisconsin statutes 125.51 and subject to any guidance provided by the Department of Revenue regarding total costs associated with the license. And that is just due to the fact that I believe the city was looking to charge an additional fee, which I don't believe they are allowed to. I have had conversations with their clerk and their administrator, and I believe they are willing to drop those additional charges, but I want to make sure I get confirmation from the Department of Revenue before doing so. Any questions?
So the general content is that it goes to one specific establishment, Contento, on 627 Genesee Street. It can only go to them.
Only to them, yes, that's what
Can't-
this
Can't go to
outlines.
the gun club or anybody.
Correct.
Even in, so this is where this is going to go immediately. If that restaurant closes, changes hands, I mean, the city of Delafield keeps this license or it
They
reverts
will
back to
keep the
us?
license, yeah.
Okay.
Well, unless it's not in use for a continuous period of 12 months, then it
Okay.
reverts back to the town.
Correct.
Okay? And, go ahead, Dan.
So if the restaurant decides not to open for any reason, I think we would probably receive the license back for the $25,000.
And we'd have to refund the 25,000.
We would, yes.
Yeah. And the transfer fee to the town, I mean, the transfer fee to Delafield, the city is capped at 25,000, and therefore the fee to the applicant is capped at 25,000.
Correct. Beside other fees that the Department of Revenue does allow,
Yeah, small,
such
small.
as $600 fee for the actual Class B license, but the transfer license, which is essentially the reserve fee, is capped at, we have at 25,000, but takes place of the $10,000 reserve fee that is typical, so.
It was a much more complicated contract to negotiate than is apparent on the page and a half.
We do have a draft, though, and I know that they are potentially looking for another liquor license for another future restaurant
Yeah.
next year, so we may have the opportunity again to do this.
And the city council already approved a liquor license for Contento, so that was approved at last week's meeting.
Correct.
So they're just waiting for us to do this and then transfer it.
Great.
And I think 25 is a good amount.
Yeah.
We've never charged 25 before.
Perfect. Motion to approve the sale of a reserve Class B license to the city of Delafield and approve a liquor license transfer agreement. It's authorized under Wisconsin statutes 125.51 and subject to any guidance provided by the Department of Revenue regarding total costs associated with the license.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the transfer.
I assume Eric's reviewed this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely, more than once. Reserve Class B license to the city of Delafield, All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Discussion possible action on code enforcement options for the property located at N13 W28907 Silvernail Road. If you recall, we discussed this approximately 30 days ago. The applicant was present, made a presentation, and we gave specific instructions as to what progress we expected as a board. So Dan, you want to bring us
Yeah,
up to date?
the owner did apply for a demolition permit and paid the associated fees. I have not seen anybody on the site doing work yet, so we're giving to the end of this week to see those people actually on the site and taken down. If not, as we discussed, this will require action from our attorney. From what I understand, there are some people that are interested in the site and that are willing to take down the building upon a sale of the property, but we can't rely on that at this point, so.
When was the permit applied for?
Last week.
And was there any further indication given?
Only that,
When work would start?
no. She mentioned sometime this week that they would like to start, but I haven't seen anything, so,
I drove by the other day and saw nothing.
yeah.
That was
there's-
there yesterday.
there's nothing.
It's still there. Is there a recommendation of action?
No, I
on
think
this,
you
or is it
guys
just-
gave it to us last time, so I think
Okay.
we have direction on what to do at this point,
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
And I think it's encouraging that some credible body has come forward and wants to purchase it and committed to tearing it down and rebuilding. So hopefully we can move a little faster than we've been moving in the past.
So what happens if no action takes place by the end of the week? I mean, what are we gonna, I mean, what's Eric gonna
The
do? Or does
attorney
Eric
will-
have the green light to get this thing moving?
Yep. The attorney
Well, I don't
will-
know if he has a green light, but we'll work with him on the appropriate steps.
I think
will
we
push
should,
it
yeah,
forward.
start the process of
Yeah.
getting it raised and, hopefully between then and the start of that, and it's gonna be a long process. I mean, it's gonna
It's gonna be an
probably
expensive
be
process,
months,
too.
if not years, to get through it. So, I mean, hopefully within that time, a buyer comes forward or the actual demolition takes place, but, we'll give it the green light at that point, so.
So she's selling it or demoing it?
She wants to sell it, but she pulled a permit to demo it.
Okay.
But she's been trying to sell it for a while now, so, I mean, I just don't wanna,
Yeah, but credible buyers come forward.
well,
Well, that's, I share the same sentiment that just because she's trying to sell it doesn't mean she will, so.
the bottom line is, this issue needs to be resolved. It's been going on for too long, and we need to expedite it as quickly and as, using all the tools that we have available to us to get this thing resolved.
And that's what we intend to do.
Okay?
There's no further discussion. We'll move on to announcements and planning items. The Planning Commission is set for September 6th, 2022, and in the event that people aren't aware of it, the Thomas Farm public hearing has been moved back to the October schedule now. It's no longer, we were intending to have a public hearing at that September 6th, and we've moved it back. Budget workshop is Tuesday, September 13th at 4:30. Town board is September 13th at 6:30. And our second budget workshop is September 27th at 5 PM. And the town board meets at September 27th at 6:30.
Is there a need for board members at the September 6th Plan Commission meeting?
There is, we will need one. We have a joint public hearing with Waukesha County.
On,
Is it not a joint? Oh, I'm sorry. Just a joint plan in Waukesha County, so never mind.
okay.
But you're welcome to come.
You can come.
You're all welcome to come. Pass this to Dan, please.
It's riveting YouTube.
I gotta get through these
Watching
fire
that.
meetings before I can pick up another.
But you had to get to a sailing regatta.
Need to make money to afford
Nothing
it.
else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Again.
Great, we're adjourned. Or, all those in favor say aye.
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 Now we're adjourned.